Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. This is Jim, your stand-in for John. It's good to have a twin, is it not? Hey, we still want to talk about the same things. That's right. I'm just in the other office right now. Been working on SHTF files all day long. And I wanted to start with this one, folks. Regular people are being hammered. And if you were part of their team, right, you're not. They will cut you loose. They will cut you to the quick. They'll cut you quick. And I tell you what, folks, you've got to stay ahead of the curve. That's what we do here. You know, we all do. The entire Prepared Mind network, the R Syndicate, etc. We all do our best to stay ahead of the curve. That's why we catalog everything. That's why we document everything, to stay ahead of the curve. Now, I want to start with a newscaster. That's right, folks, one of them, and I want to make this example really clear. You can't ever be one of them. All you can do is carry their water for them. All you can ever really do is be a human resource. So, veteran newscaster Kim St. Ong, right? She's in St. Louis. St. Louis, worked there, for more than 10 years. Now, she was granted a religious exemption from that's right, the Jim Jones juice mandate. She was given a religious exemption, and then she was treated like shit. So, I figured I would tell you what it was she did, or they did to her. She said she didn't quit. Her contract wasn't up. She was let go over the vaccine mandate. Now, she had to get a letter from her pastor. I don't know anywhere in the Constitution where it says you need to have someone else agree with your beliefs in order for them to be valid. Anyways, she was told she needed to follow these policies. Wear an N95 mask at all times. Get tested twice weekly, right? And anytime she was in an on-site meeting, she had to attend virtually. In other words, sit in another room. And she said that she was told that, if she couldn't sit in the same room as people who got the Jim Jones juice, right, what's the point? So she was offered a non-disclosure agreement worth several $1,000s, and she turned it down. Now, it's quite interesting, folks. She says, I want my future kids to know their mom stood up for her beliefs, her morals, even though it cost their mom her job. This is fascinating, folks. People are looking at this as a very important moment, a seminal moment in American history. Letting the world know that they're creating a two-tiered system. People standing up for the courage of their convictions. Men and women across the spectrum, folks, are saying no more. Now we're seeing it in media, in military. We're seeing it in government. We're seeing it in the private sector. We're seeing it from young, old, black, white, and every other color. And she says, quote, our freedoms are being stripped away. Freedoms as parents, grandparents, and freedoms our parents, our grandparents, and so many others fought for. Right? She says, doctors and nurses who were hailed heroes in 2020 are now among the unemployed. She says, I refuse to stand for a company dictating medical decisions for its employees. Do you have the courage of your convictions? That's a lot of what we do right here. Whether it's me or John, we're talking about the courage of your convictions. If you don't have the information, if you don't know what's going on out there, how can you make a decision? How can you stand up for yourself? How can you stand up for others? That's why getting and staying current is so critical and important. So critical and important. I wanted to go over something really quick. Yesterday, we talked about the VA turning away anyone who was not jabbed. We have a correction on that. There is no mandate nor requirement for vets to be vaccinated. there was a mistake made in handing me that information. It is that those who are currently in the military that refuse the Jim Jones juice will be separated under other than honorable conditions, which makes them no longer eligible for Veterans Administration services. So wanted to get that correction in there. We don't ever want to make a mistake. We want to try and be as accurate as possible here. So let's move on, though, if we shall. And this is important. People standing up for the courage of their convictions. We need to see what's going on and stay ahead of the curve. Folks, in New York, New Yorkers are speaking out against these Jim Jones mandates. There was a massive rally there. Okay. Now, RFK, the nephew of JFK, RFK Jr., right? His brother was RFK. Anyways, he had a speaking engagement here. And it's important, folks, that the further we get into this, we're going to start seeing and hearing more big names standing up and fighting against mandates, fighting against the social justice warriors, fighting against the cancel culture, fighting against this system that is hell-bent on destroying the country. And we need to be wary, folks, of public events. We need to be wary of wolves in sheep's clothing. I'm not standing up and saying, I'm a leader, follow me. I'm saying, stand up for yourself, listen for yourself, think for yourself, and decide for yourself. But there are going to be a lot of people, folks, that come out and say, it's time. Be very careful. Be very careful. Now, moving along, Yahoo News, yahoo.com. Guess what they did? They came out today with a fear porn headline, and it said, people are hoarding. Food shortages are the next supply chain crunch. Now, I expect to have a food shortage and a supply chain crunch with regard to food. But the first part of this little headline is people are hoarding. There's not a whole lot of evidence of that at all. In fact, the article doesn't state anything other than, well, a local market in Chicago as a shortage of canned and boxed goods. And in Denver, they're having a hard time getting milk. That doesn't mean people are hoarding, but that's what they're going to push, folks. Remember, their narrative will take a little bit of truth and a lot of bullshit, and they'll put that truth on the outside and they'll tell it. That's what a headline is. Most people will only read this headline and go, people are hoarding. People are hoarding. Look out, folks. There's going to be a lot of misdirection. There's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of anger. All right. And speaking of that, the Federal Bureau of Investigation today raided the home of a Russian, shall we say, I mean, what term do we use? A Russian who lives in America. It's not necessarily a defector, could have been, but he lives here, right? Anyways, he's connected to the Steele dossier, which is connected to the attempt to screw up the 2016 Trump election. But expect more of this as we get deeper and deeper into SHTF. Expect more distractions. Expect more misdirections. Expect more witch hunting and more lies by the leftists, the FBI Stasi, the mainstream media. As things get worse, as the system comes down, they will become more draconian. Yes, they will. Oh, man. Pardon me. I have a little more allergies than John does. All right. Now, this is a big deal. Over in Italy, they're protesting by the tens of thousands. They're protesting right now in Italy. Where's America in all of this, right? Well, we're not far behind. So I wanted to talk about some of the differences between America and Italy or other places, and then some of the similarities. What is it that is going to drive us as a nation to wake up, to take a moral stand against what is happening? So in Italy, they held a huge protest in Trieste, which is a major port city. And ultimately, or rather, well, I guess you could say ultimately, water cannons and tear gas were eventually used on the people, right? Now, I guess the Italian government has decided they can't have their port city affected by protests. They can't have their taxes and fees taken down, right? Unlike in America, where our country is more than happy to not get fees and taxes and get anything done. Anyways, unlike Americans, Italians don't have guns. So they have to use their bodies, literally use their bodies as the weapons to get in the way to interfere with government, right? Now, I want to let everyone know this is just my opinion in the United States. When we get to that same place the Italians are now, the Second Amendment will become apparent as the difference between America and everywhere else on the planet. I think the acceleration at that point will be huge. Now, on top of everything else going on in Italy, they have a religious component to it. The Catholic Archbishop Vigano offered his support to these protesters. Now, unlike the communist Pope, the Archbishop Vigano speaks his own truth and said, folks, the Jim Jones juice, victims are sacrificed at the altar of Moloch. And he said, do not think of the children of darkness, or do not think the children of darkness will act with honesty. And he said that with regard or respect to the 2020 elections, right? The Italians, folks, are protesting the mandates, and they got behind this political religious leader, because politics and faith are a little bit closer in Italy. And so they were chanting Vigano, 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 right? There could be a religious schism that develops along with political splitting within all nations. Now, I do welcome churches becoming involved in this, because the churches are not being allowed to act independent. Not anymore. Not when your faith can be denied by a corporation or the government, or even your faith can be denied by a church itself. For example, the Catholic hospital that denied over 600 of its own employees, denied their right to a religious exemption because they just didn't think it was good enough, I guess. But I do welcome churches to get involved in this, but we have to also be wary of witch hunts. We're going to see all manner, folks, of trouble. All manner. People are going to basically, I think, go off the edge. Now, in Texas, I want to head down south to the Texas border, where we have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of illegals just pouring across. Well, in Kinney County, Sheriff Coe has announced his plan to deputize local citizens to help quell the border invasion crisis. Unbelievable that this is happening, folks. It's not unprecedented, but I would say unbelievable in this day and age. And I want to remind everyone this: when the government fails to perform as required, remember, the government is authorized and charged with performing duties, tasks. They have the authority to perform law enforcement, border security, post office, etc. When they fail to perform as required and they fail their obedience to the oath they took, then local sheriffs, folks, can deputize the people and get that same job done. And that's what's happening here. Folks, when government fails to perform as required, then lawlessness develops. It exists, and then it proliferates. That's what's going on in the Texas border, right? And it's chaos that through inaction, government is sanctioning. And when government is no longer acting legitimately, it must be removed from the equation. I'm not saying that Texas needs to go to Washington, D.C. and do anything about the government. They just need to say, all government, just get the hell out of the way. We'll handle this ourselves, right? The tiered system that we have proves itself useful in this case. As federal oaths and offices fail to perform, then states and counties and cities can step up. Now, there's two looks at this. Is federal law enforcement, are they cowards, Or is it the leadership up in DC that is failing their oath of office, giving orders to stand down and allow our country to be invaded? I would put to you that the latter is the fact of the matter that's happening. Woo! Oh, by the way, the first transgender health official, Rachel Levine, is sworn in as the first 4-star admiral in the Public Health Corps. Did you know that? The Health Corps, right? I suppose that gives her some military gravitas. And I want to know if she's a rear admiral or what kind of admiral the 4-star is. That's just a little question, right? Oh, and in California, a cop got on his loudspeaker and said, "Let's go, Brandon," and a crowd went wild. Once again, I and many others believe that we should stick with the original "fuck Joe Biden." But the "let's go, Brandon" is the meme clean version that means the same thing. It is such a well understood verbal meme that the government of Canada has strictly forbidden, under penalty of law, that any Canadian government employee is not allowed to say, "Let's go, Brandon." Can you believe that shit? Talk about free speech and controlling people's thoughts. Way to go, Canada. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And Southwest Airlines they've now dusted their plans to put the unvaccinated workers on unpaid leave because the airline pilots protesting the violation of their terms of service, their contract, their union agreement. That's what they're standing on. They're saying, hey, we had an agreement and you guys are violating it. There's nothing in our contract that says you're allowed to do this. And so, hey, we got two things, folks. Let's look at this. Number one, the people have rights, and we need to cancel and boycott all corporations that even attempt to try and control us. Southwest Airlines, folks, needs to be punished and boycotted still. Punished and boycotted still. And number two, don't believe for a second that Southwest Airlines won't change its policy again and go back. It depends on court cases and political pressure. This isn't over by a long shot. There's going to be little victories, folks. Battles are not won with a single bullet. Battles are won with multiple bullets and attacks. And wars are not decided by a single outcome of a battle. This is years and years, folks. Years and years of us being exposed to this shit. But a little victory, folks, and I like to give you good news. I think good news is important. Moving along, Lori Lightfoot has accused the police, the Chicago Police Department, the Chicago Police Union, of attempting to induce an insurrection. So let's see, the mayor that hates the police has said she wants to defund them, has allowed people to abuse them. Cops, because of this attitude in Chicago, have been murdered as a consequence of her attitude and her policies. Right? Mayor Lori Lightfoot Beetlejuice is using a political buzzword, folks, insurrection. And that's a talking point that's easily repeated by dumbass Democrats. That said, look up the word insurrection, if you will. And it's not even close to the way she's using it. Folks, this is another attack on the rights of the people and the police by a communist scumbag. This is going to persist and get worse. She's just the mayor of Chicago. Illinois also has an equally scumbaggish governor named, I think, Prickster, right? And I think that the police in Chicago and around the country, police and sheriff's deputies, had all better learn what this means for them and their futures as their pensions, right, are threatened, reduced, eliminated. People better wake up and fight now politically, or in the future, the fight will get even harder. It's crazy. Yeah, she's threatening to take pensions, reduce pensions, eliminate pensions. She's threatening all manner of punishment. You're ruining your careers. You're insurrectionists. Can you believe this shit, folks? Well, believe it, because it's real. It is real, and this is what they believe. They believe they own us. We're human resources. We're just peasants. Unbelievable. I don't even know what that is. Oh, that's what this was. Trump was in a lawsuit. And this is just something that I looked at. I thought, what the hell? You know, here's what I see, right? The Mexican KKK protester lawsuit. A bunch of Mexicans, folks, not Americans, but Mexicans tried protesting outside of a Trump Towers thing and got in a squabble, right? But they were dressed in KKK uniforms or costumes, if you will. And it's free speech. I mean, with the big old pointy hat, they look like KKK members. And they were there, I guess, to try and say that Trump was KKK, even though they're the ones wearing the costumes. But if you remember back, and I wanted to bring this to your recollection, in the early days of the cerveza mania, when cerveza bug first took off and they tried all this lockdown and don't go to stores shit, a white man in San Diego, California, wore a KKK-styled mask, right, during the early days, and it was investigated as a hate crime. Everyone went off the fucking charts crazy. But non-Americans can show up en masse and wear full KKK outfits, and that's free speech. See this for what it is, folks. All of this is a sham. You should be able to say and do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anyone else. That's what having rights is about. It's not going to get better, folks. It really isn't. Now, Biden, President Xi Biden. Remember when he announced that, well, the ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach, they're going to open 24/7, and we're going to get all of those ships unloaded and handle everything. Well, apparently, no one was listening to him, right? I guess the fake cerveza mandates that they have are more effective than a fake order to a union to do their jobs. Still, folks, the complaints are coming out from truckers. The complaints are coming out, period. The ships, they're still piling up. The shortages are still real. Oh, yeah, and because there's shortages on the shelves, prices are going up. Because they're printing a bunch of money and just throwing it out to the wealthy. Funny how that works. Prices are going up. Inflation. And Jen Psaki, White House press secretary, was asked about it. She was asked about it. And basically, you know, she blamed us, the people. We are going to be the ones who get the blame for everything, folks. Right? She played it down. She did, I guess, what could be considered by many to be the modern day Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. Screw you, in other words, is what she was basically saying. It's not going to get better, folks. These people aren't going away. They're not giving up. They're not quitting. They want to punish all of us. Unbelievable what is happening. Shit. And now in California, since we're on the West Coast talking about the ports in LA, up in Sacramento, the state's capital, thousands and thousands of Californians gathered to protest Governor Newsom's school cerveza vaccine mandate. That's right. He's required, that everyone, students, be vaccinated. So people are protesting by the thousands, folks. And remember that it always starts with protests, then refusals to comply, then conflict comes, and then violence by the government. It always goes in that order. You don't start way at the end. It goes through this process. Be ready for all levels, folks, all levels and all manner of craziness. Now, remember that Governor Newsom just went through a recall effort. He is extremely unpopular, but their agenda is what is important to them. They don't care about you, folks. They don't care about us as individuals. They don't care about us as a group. They don't care about America with regard to different states. Remember the jackass congressman from Illinois just yesterday said that West Virginia is irrelevant. West Virginia is irrelevant. Not just West Virginian mountain billies, not just West Virginian government or West Virginian politics. West Virginia, period. The people, the economy, the land, everything. That's how they think. Folks, that's how they think of us, all of us. America doesn't matter to them. The Constitution doesn't matter to them. The Union doesn't matter to them. What matters is getting their agenda, their sick agenda. And in California, it's one of the states that's pushing the hardest. Pushing the hardest. Now, while doing my research today, I went to yahoo.com because I like to get a lot of mainstream media. John does too. I do as well. Yahoo News had this article, this headline: how to get super immunity. You want to know how, folks? How is this done? How is this miracle performed to get super immunity, like you're Superman or Superwoman, or right? They say in their headline, natural immunity is good. Getting vaccinated after being sick with COVID-19 is even better. Did you know that, folks? That's right. So it doesn't matter if you've had it and you have natural immunity. And see, the argument is starting to happen that, well, natural immunity is important. But they're saying, hey, you can get super immunity. How many people, folks, got cerveza bug and never knew it? They never got tested. They never had any symptoms. They didn't give a shit. They just lived their lives. Well, if you remember the figures, I'm pretty sure that cerveza bug, like 80% to 85% of people never even knew they had it. Wouldn't have known. They were asymptomatic. And that there was a big percentage, like, 15% were, I don't know, they just felt like shit. And a very small percentage ended up going to the hospital and needing to be admitted. Right. And so we now have this push to say, oh, yeah, natural immunity is good. But you know what? You really need to get the Jim Jones juice. And they're pushing that in mainstream media now. So remember how this works. And I have a word for this. There's a psychological phenomena that's been named for how they push us forward with their agenda. Don't give us all the answers, then back off. And it just disappears. But we never forget about it. And then they come back and they push even harder again. I'm going to delve into that a little bit more. Maybe it'll be something I talk about tomorrow. We'll get a little bit nerdy on the PSYOP, psychological warfare aspect of how they always take 2 steps forward, then, we'll give you a break, and they take 1 step back. They're jamming, right, the Jim Jones juice down our throat. Now they're going to back off and say, no, natural immunity is good. Back off a little. And then they're going to drive forward 2 steps and go, oh, no, we have to do this. Watch what's coming, folks. There is no easy way out of this. I hope you have gotten your questions into Jolene, though, and I'll figure out the system and get better at it as we go. But get your questions in, because I got the first half, and then you guys get the second half of the hour. And we have a lot of stuff going on. Shit is hit the fan. What is it? It's the middle of the week. Crazy stuff, folks. Oh, and 2 longtime old fossil Democrat congressmen are not going to seek re-election because the politics, folks, the optics of everything that's being done. Like other countries, America typically expresses its displeasure in politics and political action through voting. Now, I know what you're going to say. Yeah, John, we have a great voting system here in America. Works every time it's tried. I understand that, but a lot of these people are seeing that the Democrats are going to lose the majority in the House next year. I'm personally, I understand how off-year elections, that is non-presidential election years, the incumbent in the White House typically loses seats in the House. And Biden's unpopularity is off the hook. Nobody likes what this clown is doing. Nobody. So should we be surprised? No, we shouldn't. But folks, the fight is just beginning. It is going to blow us all away as this gets worse and worse. Unbelievable. Let's do this. Let's get to your questions in the second half and see where we go next.
Are you ready?
Oh, what a great time. Folks, in Washington State, the highest paid Washington State employee, the winning coach of a college, Washington State, Nick Rolovic, he was fired for refusing to take the Jim Jones juice. Folks, Governor Inslee is a pile of shit up there, and he wishes he was hated as much as Gavin Newsom. But he's doing all he can. Remember the state trooper that did his last radio sign-off and said, Governor Inslee can kiss his ass. There's no love for these people. Understand, they have power, they have authority, but they don't have the will of the people behind them. All right, we got the Blue Cord Devil checking in. Says Antifa, downtown Seattle, is mocking the fire and police that are leaving their fire boots at City Hall. So what that's all about is it's a protest. Once again, police and firefighters, EMTs, they're public employees, and they don't think they should have to take the Jim Jones juice. Well, I agree with them. They shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to. And so they're protesting. They're walking away. They're leaving their work boots. But none other than the biggest piles of shit in this country, Antifa, which stands for anti-fascist, and an anti-fascist is a pro-communist. So these little communists are there mocking, folks, firemen and police. This makes them happy to see that firemen and police are hated by their own government. And that includes the state government as well as the federal government. Antifa are licking their chops. They're having fun with this, taunting people. Remember, these are the same Antifa that assaulted police, injured police, blinded police, and murdered police in 2020. The same mentality, folks, the same group. And they're seeing the government treat their own employees like shit. Ultimately, though, folks, Antifa are going to be disposed of by the government. They're useful idiots and no more. Useful idiots and no more. All right, we got Opie Waddell checks in, and I think I know who this guy is. He says, Jimmy, great seeing you here. And thank you, Opie. It's good to be here. I saw your brother John playing the role of Big Diesel at a WCW King of the Ring last night in Macon, Georgia. That's awesome. Yeah. I appreciate that, man. I'm glad you got out and had some fun. WCW, King of the Ring. I recommend, folks, having as much fun as you can while you can in America. You're down south. You're down in Georgia. That's good, right? Some of us don't have the luxury of doing the things you do and having the fun you have. But I recommend everyone have fun while you can, where you can. Doesn't mean stop being a prepper. Doesn't mean you shouldn't worry about food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. Does not mean you shouldn't have a good plan for your area. But once you have a plan, everything else, all we have to do is keep up with the bullshit. Keep documenting what's going on and discussing it as it develops, as it evolves, as we learn what is being said and done, so we understand how we need to be out in front of it, right? Staying ahead of the curve so that we're safe That's what being a prepper is. But it doesn't mean you can't have fun. Doesn't mean you can't have a beer. Go get a cerveza, have a scotch. I'm a big fan of the scotch. Doesn't mean you can't have those things, but you should have as much as you can to help remind you of how good America is, what freedom is really like. All right, we got Bonnie Blue checks in, says, what spare vehicle parts should I be buying? Oil filters, air filters, oil, what else? She wrote, I save a pair of old tires when I replace and buy new ones. That's a good thing to do, I believe. Typically we turn our tires in with, 10 or 20% of the tread life left. But even if it's very little tread, it's still a tire that can be put on in the event a better tire gets a bullet hole or a knife slash in it. Having a set of tires is good. I do recommend oil, keeping a supply of that. When it comes to your vehicle, what are the wear parts? What can go wrong with that car is what we need to have replacements for. Is having a brand new battery, brand new 12-volt battery for your vehicle, is that a bad idea to have around? No, it's not. It's a great idea, in fact. If your battery ever goes bad, you can replace it right now and not have to worry about, does the auto parts store have my battery in stock? Batteries are stolen oftentimes. Do you think for a second that criminals won't steal batteries out of cars when the electricity's off? There's going to be a lot of people attempting, folks, to get power, electricity. It's not going to be good. Additionally, that 12-volt battery can be used as part of your solar power system, depending on how you put one together. It's important to have a battery. And I would also suggest and recommend that you have a small battery trickle charger or battery maintainer. Oil is important, though. I recommend having a tire repair kit called a plug. Go to an auto parts store and buy some plugs. It's just some gooey strips of junk with some glue and a screwdriver-like thing for poking the plug into the tire in case you get a hole and you need it to hold. Another thing I recommend is a small compressor. They plug right into your cigarette lighter / power port in your car for refilling your tires with air. You may get a flat tire because someone let all the air out, and you can repair it. Or if you repair a flat, you can fill that tire back up with air. Once again, the idea is to get you from point A to point B down the road. So you're going to need that. Another thing I would recommend is keeping, if you can do it safely and have the proper storage, get 5 gallons of gas. And every time you go to fill up, put 5 gallons out of the can into your vehicle, then put 5 fresh gallons in it. 5 gallons at 20 miles to the gallon will get you 100 miles. That's a long ways. Also, carrying a jug of water or antifreeze, if you will, depends on the climate you're in. Antifreeze or, just antifreeze, glycol, propylene glycol. Having that in your vehicle in case you get a hole in your radiator or in a radiator hose, you can at least fill it back up. Do your best, folks. Think of what your car needs, what you need for your car to get you down the road. All right, we got that was it. Oh, we got Chess Rider checks in, says the mainstream media seems to have forgotten about Afghanistan and our fellow Americans still there. Are you surprised? Nope, they've got us distracted really well, do they not? This we've been bringing up the last couple of weeks is the news cycle, which operates on a 24-hour-a-day basis, but it typically lasts 3 or 4 days. In order to keep us from focusing, they change the story. They come up with a new headline, something new and bad we need to worry about. So yeah, Afghanistan still happened. The Taliban has control of the country still. They still have $85 billion worth of equipment unless they sold it to other terror nations. There's Americans still over there, still trapped, still lost, still being held captive, still in prison, still being tortured, still being made slaves or sex slaves. You bet. Thank you, Joe Biden. Thank you, administration. Thank you, General Milli Vanilli. Thank you to everybody. Don't forget Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who made all of this possible with their brilliant decision. In a couple of days, folks, they'll stop talking about the ports. They'll stop talking about inflation. They'll move on to something else. They're talking about the debt ceiling again. They're talking about the chairman of the Federal Reserve replacing Jerome Powell with someone else. Lots of talking out there. Lots of different news stories. Perhaps something big will happen in Europe. Perhaps China will become a bigger deal. Maybe we'll need to focus on the war or the near war efforts between China and Taiwan. We're going to find out, folks. They seem to change it all the time, but those old problems never got fixed. Remember when the Mexican-American border down there in Texas was the mainstream media? They were all over that going, hey, what are you doing there, camel toes? What are you doing there, Gigi Biden? And they wouldn't give us an answer. And then after a few days, they got off of it. Now, we came back to that one a number of times. And perhaps that's going to happen because right now, it's my understanding there's 90,000 non-Americans that are nearly to the border. 90,000. Are they going to hit that border, folks, en masse and just pour through every stinking hole and across the river and into America? There's a chance. There is a chance that is precisely what will happen. And that could become main news again, and we'll forget all about all our other problems because NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNBC, CNN will all distract us. Make sure we're paying attention to something new so we can't expect results. And they want so many things out there, folks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They want a dozen problems unsolved. So they can always go, remember that other thing? We need to look at that again. But nothing ever gets solved. And they keep us confused and off balance, backing up on our heels so they can jam more of this shit down our throat. Right? The problem in Chicago, that's a big deal to the media. Oh, they're going to make a big deal. And then they'll forget all about it. They'll go on to something else. Don't worry. That's how they're playing this game, folks. It is a massive psychological operation, and I'll have the name of it for you, quite possibly tomorrow. Now we got Reaper 6 checking in. He says, I grew up on Paul Harvey. Folks, if you don't know who Paul Harvey is, he was talk radio before Rush Limbaugh. And his cash line was, and now for the rest of the story. Very famous, been around a long time, Paul Harvey was. Anyways, he says, amazing man. But I ask how many have listened to his 1960s broadcast? If I were the devil, it has all come to fruition. What I can tell you, Reaper 6, is I have never heard Paul Harvey's series when he would do the If I Were the Devil, because I'm sure that's not a single broadcast. I'm sure he could have made that into a series once a week, once a month, and said, if I were the devil, this is what I would do. And I think what you're hinting at, is that the things he talked about then are now coming to pass. That was a long time ago, the folks. The 1960s, that was over 50 years ago. 50 years ago. And it wouldn't surprise me at all, folks, because in the 1940s, we were being warned about the threat of communism. And it's all coming to pass. Even communist leaders in the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, warned us, America, about communism and that they were going to defeat us. Interestingly, though, we're getting a two-tiered system, kind of a modified system of socialism, a blend of fascism and communism. They need fascism so the elites can have their money and their power. They want to be exempt from communism. But the people are going to get a flavor of socialism that is less fascist and more plain old communist, where the government dictates to the people that it owns how you can and can't have property. You know, what rights you have. Well, you have none. You have privileges. But if you're an elite, if you're above that line in the wealth zone, which no one will be able to cross once it's established, no one will be able to come from the streets and say, I made myself a billionaire, a millionaire, or a billionaire, because the communist lower side will keep everyone poor. As they've been saying for the last couple of years, no one will own anything and they'll be happy. You'll be happy that you're a renter, happy that you don't own a car. Everything you have, you will rent from someone who's wealthy. And who's going to be the wealthy one? Corporations, folks. Unbelievable. Uman asked this, hey, Jim, what was it like growing up with John? Well, I guess I could make the same, give you the same response our brother Tom has, right? You know, the best way I can describe it is looking in a mirror and having a conversation with yourself. That's the best way I can describe it. You know, some brothers fight a little more than others, and some are just the same. Now, I grew up with friends Mitch and Matt. They were 2 years apart and so similar that they were friends on into adulthood. You know, and then I know other guys, friends of mine like Vince and Matt, who just about killed each other all the time. But, you know, John's an all right guy. And we see eye to eye, synoptically, if you will. So we did quite well, you know, quite well that way. James and John, and then my nephew there, Luke. You know, we got a lot of biblical reference there, if you will. Anyways, thanks for asking. We got FJP13. He said, who is the new greatest trafficker of humans? Well, I believe the greatest trafficker of humans is the Biden administration with Joe Gigi Biden at the top. They are moving illegal immigrants around this country, known as trafficking at night, by plane, by train, by bus, by car, by van, moving people around the country, putting them in places. Who makes the decision where these people go? Are they bureaucratically looked after? Do they have to check in? How do they get money? Who's feeding them? Who's paying for their housing? What government institution is handling all of this human trafficking to bring all of these illegals in? Haitians, Mexicans, Central Americans. Who knows from what other countries around the world they're being shuttled in and then shuttled about? Unbelievable. Trevor K checks in and says, thanks for everything you and the crew do. It's appreciated. You bet, man. It's hard work. The Prepared Mind Network is full of people working their asses off. John works hard. I work hard. Jolene works hard. We all work hard, everyone. And then there's a lot of people out there, folks, who are nameless, who just provide information, insights, send pictures, news stories from around the country and around the world. It is incredible what is going on. The fact that people want to participate. You are participating right now. One of the big things I can do is ask. I mean, I'll ask you guys, bring your questions, send your questions into Jolene right now. She'll get them up. But the other part is share the links to these videos. I know right now we're live on Patreon. So by joining Patreon, you are guerrilla funding the effort. But we want the awareness of the Prepared Mind Network and the rsyndicate.com. We want awareness of it to spread. Very few Americans know about us. They think that YouTube is now silent because some of the biggest channels that were there, like Alex Jones, the SGT Report and others, they've just been wiped out. There's a lot of us smaller guys, older guys, and we know how to, I guess you could say, dance between the raindrops, avoid the electric third rail, you know, and not get zapped. And it's hard, though. You know, we get strikes, and we do our very best to avoid the pitfalls. But a lot of people, they don't know about us because YouTube, Google, has done everything they can to hide us. And so we do everything we can to get out. And that is asking you to cut and paste the URL to videos, cut and paste, and send that to others off of YouTube so other people can see what the hell is going on and understand the choice is theirs. right? The choice is theirs. And being ahead of the curve, folks, it's interesting. I made that kind of the title for this video. Big banks are now finally starting to recognize that in China, their economic crisis is huge. They're finally recognizing that the Evergrande problem is just the beginning of the Chinese economic crisis in real estate and all over. I think we've been warning about that here on the Prepared Mind Network for years. China has grown so fast and put itself in so much debt that it makes the United States of America look responsible. And I know that is really, really, really hard to believe, but it's true. China is that jacked up. Are they going to be the world reserve currency? I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be a world reserve currency. I think there's going to be some interesting economic situations set up. One of the things is that nations will settle debt in gold or gold notes. And then within countries, they're all going to have their own little private digital currencies that they make sure they track everything you do and everything you buy to make sure they know exactly what you're up to and that they've taxed the ever-loving shit out of you. Oh, what a day, folks. What a day. I've got something new for you here, though. 1 second. It was from Unlikely Event. Thank you very much for the message. I will be very careful when I film while driving. And I don't think you're a nut. But don't worry, we're going to continue to do all we can. And also, we're going to do all we can to fool and confound the opponents that we face. But get this, I do appreciate it, though. Thank you very much. It's not an easy business we're in, and what we do is important. What I do, what you do, what John does, what Jolene does, what Uman does, all very, very important. Now, this last thing came up, and it really bothered me. And I read the comments on it, but it was a video that was posted by people in the Army, and it was a drill sergeant leading U.S. soldiers who were wearing masks in a woke chant about Martin Luther King. The Army is supposed to be military, right? It's supposed to be nonpartisan, but we're seeing how it's becoming more partisan. It's not supposed to be about race or gender or ethnicity or what you identify as. It's supposed to be about killing people and blowing shit up, right? So here we have this thing. He says soldiers, right, were wearing masks outside in this video. And it looked to me like they were marching Army quick time. Army and Marine Corps marching around is very similar, but not identical. Anyways, they're kind of marching. It looks like they were heading to go do some PT, but they were wearing masks outside. And when a drill sergeant or platoon leader calls cadence, you're supposed to repeat it. And so they're being forced to repeat while masked what this drill sergeant's political propaganda was. You know, military cadence, for what it's worth, used to be about killing, fighting, drinking, winning war, and carousing. And if there were any names in it of people, they were military people. So while we were not back in the day all political correct, what we did say was expected of masculine young men who are also patriotic Americans. It looks like our military, these poor bastards, are being treated like commie bitches reciting communist filth. I'm sure right now that the morale in the military is piss poor and it's in the gutter. So if you see any military personnel Let them know, and you may find some surprises. Let them know that we, the people, support patriotic, American, constitutional, right, law. You may find some young communist folks. You may find some young military communists that think everything's just fucking dandy. That would be interesting. If I meet one of them, it'll be interesting. If they say, hey, I like this woke military. I'd be like, you're a fucking communist piece of shit. Wearing the uniform doesn't give you a pass, right? Spies in war, folks. A spy is somebody who is operating against your country. A spy is somebody who may or may not wear a uniform. If they choose to wear a uniform as a spy, they're typically wearing the uniform of their enemy and pretending to be one of us. You know, like a Benedict Arnold. Kind of like that West Point cadet that turned his cover upside down, his hat, and showed the inside to the camera. Someone taking a picture. It said, communism will win. Communism is treason. Communism hates America. But if you see military people, let them know where you stand. And if they're communist folks, they may be very afraid and realize, if they get it a lot, right? People say, hey, Constitution, military, America, red-blooded, apple pie, all that stuff. Semper Fi. I have yet to meet one of these little communists, but I know they're there. I take that back. I met a veteran communist from the Army in person. Not what I call something pleasant. Anyways, let us move on. We got Who's Your Life? And he says, Jim, you need to listen to If I Were a Devil. It's on segment True Today. That's terrific. Here on Patreon, perhaps somebody can put the link up and we can post it on Patreon. I think that's a great idea. We can't post things like that on YouTube. YouTube does not allow that sort of thing. Not easily. It's a mess, folks. We have a communication system right now, you and I, that is hampered. It is crippled. It is handicapped. In other words, it's not functioning very well. And a lot of us are like that as human beings. We're handicapped, right? Wearing glasses. I can wear them until my nose hurts. But typically I wear glasses. Right now I've got the computer set on very large words so I can see what's going on. We got Blue Cord Devil checks in and says, got our Pure Blood t-shirts in today. Thanks, Kaz, and all of y'all. This Pure Blood thing is something that the R Syndicate and Kaz worked on. And what it refers to is somebody who hasn't muddied their DNA with Kool-Aid. We're going to find out how detrimental this is to our systems, folks, because the people that got and put out the Jim Jones juice are the same people who have been working on sterility drugs and have been doing that for years and years. And some might say they did it intentionally, purposefully, to perfect it. Interesting stuff. Good God 74 says, I live and work in Kent, Washington, and there was a shooting down the block from work, but he died in front of my store. I am so sad with King County in Washington. I need to move to Eastern Washington. That may be a good idea. It's my understanding that Eastern Washington is very conservative, very, very pro-freedom, pro-constitution. And of course, you're backed up to Idaho there, very close to Montana. This country, folks, is tearing itself in two. Actually, I shouldn't say the country's tearing itself in two. I should say the Democrat Party, President Biden, 90 Proof Nancy, up Chuck Schumer, they're tearing this country in two, along with governors like Newsom, Pritzker, Inslee, Brown, etc. All right, I got Shrek here. He says, think the Jim Jones juice might bring people together like King George, to give the people a common theme to stand up to. That's a good point you're making there, Shrek. In America, the colonial America of 1776 and before, prior to the Declaration of Independence being penned by Thomas Jefferson and many other fraternal brothers, before that happened, the people were, in large, united against the tyranny. But there were many Tories, folks, that is, there were many American colonists who were in line with King George. They supported King George. They liked King George. They liked the system they were operating. They liked tyranny. They liked big government. We have the same thing today. Now, what happened back then was the patriots who fought against King George in the American Revolution, they were armed and they were pissed off and they wanted their freedom. And those that loved the king basically stood down, but they were still there. Essentially, folks, they became the Democrats we have today. Once again, big government, totalitarian despots, suck-ups. They'll kiss the ass of whoever's in charge. So when the American people won their freedom, these King George supporting Tories just kiss the ass of the new government, because that's what they do until they get power to destroy and take over and bring in big tyrannical government again. Isn't that fascinating how that works? Well, that's what's going on. Thank you very much, Jolene. We're all done and we're just over an hour. The same thing is happening, though, right? The same thing is happening. People need to be ready for what's coming, prepared. The suck-ups will get out of the way. The hardcore leftists will get in the way and find out that they don't have much room to stand on. But our country, its freedom was won by a small percentage of people, and the rest just got on board with it and benefited from it. I mean, different circumstances this time, different technology, different weapons, but it's the same idea. It's freedom and liberty versus tyrannical, evil government. Question you get to ask yourself is, are you going to stand on one side or the other? Or are you just going to lick the boot of whatever authority is standing in front of you? I believe in freedom and liberty, and there'll be no boot licking. Doesn't mean you're not going to get kicked around with those boots, but that's really what we got coming, folks. We're going to get kicked around. It started. Shit has hit the fan. You need to stay ahead of the curve. See what's coming, right? You put your ear down on a rail track, you can hear a train coming. You need to do all you can. Good God checks back in and says, how can I connect with fellow preppers? I've been in Washington State and Kent for 3 years now, but keep meeting left-leaning people. I want to meet friends who I can trust and agree with. Any ideas for me? Well, you need to go to sporting goods stores, gun stores. You need to go to shooting ranges. You need to join a local Republican Party chapter and meet people that way. Another way you could meet people is wear a hat that identifies you as a Trump supporter, a red-blooded American. You can wear a hat. Veterans, by and large, us older guys, are all more freedom-oriented. Wear a hat that says, I support veterans. Wear a hat that says, I'm a prepper. Are you? And you'll probably have people say, hey, I'm a prepper too. And you'll meet people that way. You may get some flack. You might want to wear it in a shooting range, gun store, sporting goods store, to minimize the amount of bullshit you're going to get. Because, now the areas that I travel in, they tend to be more conservative, and I put myself in there. And you've talked about getting out of Kent. So that may be an advisable idea altogether. There are hotbeds or places where the leftists are really thick, and they are loud, obnoxious, opinionated assholes. And they will attack you. Maybe not physically, but certainly verbally. Let's see. Now, I don't know what the mask requirements are there where you're at, but if you go into a store where masks aren't required, if someone is wearing a mask, odds are they're a liberal. Wear a hat that says masks are bad. I hate masks. Wear a hat that says fuck all liberals. Wear a hat that says fuck Joe Biden or let's go Braden. or Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. If you wear that hat, you're probably going to have people tell you exactly what they think of you, good or bad, right? You may have to eat a couple bites of shit sandwich in order to get to some sandwich that tastes better. We're going to stop right there, though. Looks like we're out of questions. Again, you guys be cool. Thank you for entertaining me, or rather letting me entertain you and inform you and talk about shit hitting the fan with you. John will be back in about 2 weeks. He'll be back, I think, next week, at the end of next week, for the worldwide weekly wrap-up uncensored. But until then, you'll have me standing in as guest, John's brother Jim. That's just what happens when we get a strike. I got to be the one who steps in, and it's good to have a twin, right? Good to have a twin. So I'll bid you adieu, and I'll go pick up John from the work site. You guys be cool. Be safe. Be prepared. Folks, chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Godspeed to you all, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.